oh, the Suns got fleeced on that deal. Well, they had no option. They had only three options, really. They had Houston, San Antonio, and Miami because that's where KD wanted to go. He had 1 year left on his contract, so he said, look, if I don't go to these teams, I'm not going to extend my contract. So the Suns had only three guys to kind of deal with, and that's why Houston could kind of work the deal in their favor. But in the end, it's over. What's done is done, right, Robby? The Suns got, the 10th pick overall in this year's draft. They also got 5 second-round picks, a couple tomorrow and some more in years to come. But, it's always fun to see the NBA draft because I love to go back and look at old drafts. I'm like, man, they could have had this guy. They could have had that guy.
I was going to say, that's a scary proposition for Suns fans when you go down memory lane that way.
So what do you think? The Suns were on the clock at number 10, and not a lot of people expected the big fella from Duke, right? Collin Murray-Boyles to fall to them. And when he falls to you, a guy that's 7'2", 250, a guy that plays on both ends of the floor, it's almost a no-brainer.
That's a game-changing pick, potentially, for the Suns. The Suns, we look at the roster construction after the Kevin Durant trade. You look at the stats here. From the big man, they just selected, well, technically the Rockets selected him because the trade can't be official. So Suns fans, if you're watching the draft, you're probably thinking, why was he wearing a Rockets hat? And they got the Rockets logos. Well, because technically the way the NBA works, it's not till July 6th when the new league year starts, when the trades get finalized. But when the Kevin Durant trade happened, like you alluded to, Richard, Suns fans, I think, were a little confused maybe with what was coming back, and you look at roster fits. Well, they got a bunch of guards, and how is this roster going to look? And what we said that Sunday night on Fox 10 Talks here, Richard, that this was not a finished product for what the Suns were going to look like, and you're starting to see the vision come together a little bit more now. Not only do they select the center out of Duke with the 10th overall pick, but basically almost simultaneously swinging a trade for Mark Williams, the starting center from the Charlotte Hornets. So immediately, within 30 seconds, the Suns added an immense amount of size to their front line. It's something that they really haven't had. I mean, they had a 7-footer in DeAndre Ayton, but they never really had a backup running mate with him. They had JaVale McGee and guys coming in and out, but they've never really had a core of young big men talent like they're going to have here.
Yeah, and that's one thing we kind of alluded to, that the Suns were going to be wheelers and dealers, right? We thought they could trade down, right, with that 10th pick and trade back further into the first round and stockpile picks. But when you get a guy like Collin Murray-Boyles to drop to you, it's almost a no-brainer. But they ended up trading that second pick in the first round, the 29th overall pick that Robby alluded to, and they get a proven product. And that's one thing the Suns need. They need size. They need NBA players. They need toughness. And you can kind of see in the Kevin Durant trade, Dillon Brooks was one of the players, along with Jalen Green, that came over in this trade. And he's one of those guys that you need on the defensive end of the floor, a guy that doesn't worry about his shots. He just wants to guard the best scorer on the other team, but he could also shoot. So that's one thing the Suns were kind of saying, when they got the new head coach in Jordan Ott, when they got the new GM in Gregory, that they, wanted to get tougher. And when we saw the Suns play last year, there wasn't a level of toughness that was on the court that you need to win games. And it's nice to see the Suns kind of addressing that with a couple players. And we could see a couple more trades between now and then. You never know, right, Robby?
Yeah, I'm curious, and this is all, stuff developing as we're doing this. This is what's fun to do this stuff, because we can kind of talk about breaking news as it happens on YouTube and the Fox Local app here. But right now, the proposed deal that is being reported to Charlotte is 2 first-round picks, 29 this year, the 29th overall pick, and then a 2029 first-round pick, and then Mark Williams coming back. Since the Suns are a second-apron tax team still, I would assume a player has got to be leaving the Suns roster, going somewhere to make this deal work, because the Suns can't bring in any more salary with Mark Williams coming in without sending a player out. So this feels like potentially maybe the start of another tangential deal that teams are going to get brought in here, because I don't know how that trade gets finalized without salaries matching, because the way the Suns, the tax implications of them being such a high salary over the salary cap team. So it definitely feels like there is, maybe if it's not more tonight, tomorrow, the next day. We know the Suns like wheeling and dealing, like you said, and just logistically still looking at this roster, there are a lot of holes still to fill, and you still got Bradley Beal out there. There is a lot more change coming, but you have to like the start to how this has gone, because we've been curious. Brian Gregory's never done this before, the new general manager for the Suns, and you could see the vision of why they made the KD trade, the way the pieces they brought back, why they did it. The draft board fell to them. They did the right thing, in my opinion, in your opinion, selecting Maluach out of Duke. you got to give credit to what Brian Gregory and that front office is doing right now, because you could see that there was a plan here.
Yeah, and then it's also sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. And they were lucky that this guy drops to them, because it's a no-brainer. But like Robby was mentioning, that this is still a work in progress. There's still plenty of more moves that are going to be made, and a lot of fans out there, and even Michael Obi, our director back there, he was asking me earlier, like, what are the Suns going to do with all these guards and stuff? Because when you look at the roster, it just doesn't. It's not balanced, but it's still it's like when you go and somebody's changing your alternator in your car, and you get there and your engine's taken apart, and they got you because they had to move parts to get to the alternator. You're like, oh, what'd you guys do to my car? No, it's gonna get put back together. They're not gonna play. When's the next game? They haven't even started the summer league yet. The first round of the draft isn't over, so just calm down, people. The Suns are gonna make some moves. I talked to our Suns insider Flex from Jersey, Felix Cruz, who's dialed in. And we talked about the possible moves that the Suns could be making. And Robby mentioned a guy's got to get out, right? And one guy that could be the next big piece moved is Bradley Beal. So I talked to Flex about the possibility of moving Bradley Beal and how likely it is that Bradley Beal will not be a member of the Phoenix Suns next season. So this is what he had to say.
Bradley Beal is the guy that's being the most talked about. We did a show recently, and I told you it was almost 0% that Brad Beal will be back. I'm sticking with that. Brad Beal will not be back. I know there was a lot of talk about him getting bought out, but in the last current days, I've done multiple shows and had multiple conversations about the fact that there are 2, 3, now even 4 teams that are calling about Brad Beal. People want Brad Beal. There's a deal to get done. I do believe he'll waive his no trade clause. I think he understands that his time in Phoenix is over. This is a guy that sat on the bench behind Devin Booker and Tyus Jones. Now the pecking order has changed. Now you got Devin Booker and you got Jalen Green. So if Brad Beal, people that think Brad Beal won't waive his no trade clause, Richard, this guy wants to play. This guy is a professional basketball player who wants to play and wants to prove that he's still got a lot of juice in the tank. So I do believe that Brad Beal will get traded, not bought out, and it can happen very soon. Teams like Boston, Brooklyn, Chicago, Charlotte, all those teams are having conversations about Brad Beal right now.
There you go. So yeah, Bradley Beal is going to be moved sooner or later, and whether you buy him out or you trade him. And that's the thing about Bradley Beal is he has a no trade clause, which is very rare. Only him and LeBron James are the only 2 players in the NBA that have that, where he can say, no, I'm gonna not go there. So they have to kind of work with him on where he wants to go. And if you're Bradley Beal, like Flex said, you want to play, right? You're an NBA player. You don't want to come off the bench. So Robby, I think he's going to kind of pick where he wants to go. He'll waive his no trade clause. So that's where it gets tricky, because you have to find a team that he wants to go to, and you have to find a team that wants him at the same time. But the thing is, Bradley Beal can still play. He just wasn't a good fit with the Phoenix Suns. It seems like several of the guys the chemistry just wasn't there. So like you said, if they can move Bradley Beal and get some other players, some toughness, guys that are role players, because we watched the NBA Finals. You watch the Thunder and the Pacers. And they didn't have a bunch of superstars on that team. You had
a bunch of good dudes.
Right. You had guys that were role players, and that's what you need.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm glad you mentioned how Bradley Beal and LeBron James are the only guys that have no trade clauses in their contract, because I think a lot of people kind of were under the assumption that Kevin Durant did as well, with the way that process played out, with him saying he didn't want to go to Minnesota, right, and then maybe he wants to go to Miami. No, he wants to go to San Antonio. He did not have Kevin Durant didn't have a no trade clause. The Suns were reportedly working with KD, and they got him to the destination he wanted to go. But at any point, they could have, in theory, said, no, Minnesota's offer was better. Sorry, buddy, you're buying a bigger jacket, and you're going to the Minnesota winter. They didn't do that ultimately. But the Bradley Beal thing, the other interesting thing with Bradley is the reports that in the Houston trade offer, there was a report or multiple reports out that Houston offered, as a choice. Did you want another first-round pick back in the deal, or did you want these 5 second-rounders? And the Suns reportedly opted for these 5 second-round picks, which, if you're thinking of it in the context of a Bradley Beal trade, it's a huge contract. He's got to waive his no-trade clause. It sounds crazy, but you may need almost a deal sweetener, as they say, to get a team to take Bradley Beal. So if that were to be, happening, you could kind of see how the 5 second-round picks play in there where you say, okay, Bradley Beal, and here's 3 or 4 second-round picks, and the Suns take back whatever in a deal like that. So you can kind of see, again, the logic of what this front office is trying to do here.
Right, and when you go back to the Kevin Durant thing, where he didn't have a no-trade clause, but he did have the power to dictate where he wanted to go because he only had 1 year left on that contract. So if you're Minnesota and you say, yeah, well, we'll take Kevin Durant, but then you find out Kevin Durant's only going to be there for 1 year, he's not going to be happy, and then you look at the whole Jimmy Butler situation, and you have a guy that's not happy. So that's why it seems, like you said, he had a no-trade clause, but he didn't. But yes, so it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out for the Phoenix Suns. But they do have several options, plenty of options. And so far, so good, like you said, right, with Brian Gregory and Jordan Ott getting one of the guys that they had high on their draft board. A lot of people did. So it's interesting to see the Suns finally get a break and have a guy drop to them, at number 10. And, of course, this is, like you said, July 6th is when the new league kind of kicks in, and that's when they'll become official that, Khaman Maluach is now a member of the Phoenix Suns. And we'll see what they do with the 2 picks that they have tomorrow. They could package those up with other picks. And, of course, we'll keep you posted on what they do. But, look, Jalen Green was another guy that came over in this trade. This guy can score. He's only 23 years old. He was the number 2 pick in the NBA draft just a couple of years ago. And, he had a bad series. He had a bad game 7 in round 1. But the Houston Rockets were the number 2 seed in the Western Conference last year, and the Suns got 2 of their starters. One of their best scorers in Jalen Green, their best offensive player probably, and then their defensive enforcer in Dylan Brooks, a guy that I mentioned you need on that wall. You want on that wall, a guy that the Suns desperately needed. And during that trade, when the Suns and the Rockets were going back and forth, the Suns actually said, we want Dylan Brooks in this deal. We're not going to make the deal until you put that in. As Robby mentioned, sometimes you need these little sweeteners in there, and that was the one that the Rockets were like, oh, we don't really want to give him up, but we will just because they're going to get Kevin Durant, right? And so I think the Rockets definitely won on that deal, but the Suns didn't get as fleeced as people are thinking they are, right? And we'll talk about that trade coming up. We're going to take a break in a minute. We got more from Flex from Jersey, our Suns insider, and of course, we'll be right back, after a quick break, but boy, we got plenty to talk about when it comes to the Phoenix Suns. And we're back. It's Fox 10 Talk Sports, the fun stuff. It's the NBA draft tipping off tonight, the Phoenix Suns had not one, but 2 picks. They've already made some moves. We got our number 1 draft pick, Robby Baker, in the house, breaking it down. And, it's funny because, the Suns got the 10th pick in this trade with Kevin Durant. You can get some value there. When you look back we always talk about going and looking back at drafts in the past. Kobe Bryant, 13th pick, Devin Booker, 13th pick. So, what are your thoughts on this kid from Duke?
Khaman Maluach, arguably, if not the best big man prospect people have said in the draft. And I'll be honest, I'm not an NBA draft expert, if you will. I don't have a scouting brain when it comes to basketball. Yeah. So a lot of my analysis is what I've kind of read of what other people think of these prospects. But you look at the stats in the sense speak for themselves. A 7'2" center, those don't grow on trees. You need guys like that on your roster if you want to compete.
If they do grow on trees, we need to buy one of those trees.
Yeah. The Suns
plant that tree right now.
The Suns needed size like this, and as a freshman to average almost a double-double on the Duke team that went to the Final Four, that's nothing to scoff at. And according to a bunch of the stuff I read, scouts believe that Khaman Maluach has the potential to develop his shot more and could ultimately end up, if he hits his ceiling of all ceilings, could end up being a three-point shooting big man with the kind of raw skill set he has, is what scouts have said on different things that I've read since this pick was made. If that all happens, then the Suns got one of the best players in the draft. Obviously, a lot of things have to come together there, but it's not just the 10th overall pick. It's what we were talking about before the break of making the trade for Mark Williams, who Suns fans may not remember, in 2022, he was the 15th overall pick. So basically, in the span of about 45 seconds today, the Suns acquired 2 lottery centers, with their trade in this draft pick. And those are the type of players, those are the type of moves this team needed to make to change the dynamic and the look of this roster. Yeah,
and I always find it interesting when you read the little scouting reports, right? And we talked about the value you can get at number 10. And then especially when a guy with the talent and the skill set of Collin Murray-Boyles falls to you. And even if he doesn't improve his scoring, that's fine, because you got Jalen Green and Devin Booker. Mm-hmm. They're going to want to shoot your shots. Don't worry. They'll take all the shots you don't want to take. But, you look at these scouting reports. I like to look at old scouting reports. Let's take SGA, right? Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was the 11th pick in the 2018 draft. It was the Suns had 2 picks in the top 10 that year. They had the number 1 pick. They took DeAndre Ayton. They had the 10th pick. And they took Mikal Bridges. Of course, Mikal Bridges was pretty good. DeAndre Ayton was the valley-oop, one of the greatest moments in Suns history. But they could have had SGA, the league MVP right now at number 11. And, Robby, I'm going to read this to you. This is the old scouting report.
I'm excited for this.
Yeah, SGA was taken 11th, right? Needs development to be a lead guard at the next level. Well, guess what?
He developed.
I think he developed. Right? This year, he's the league MVP, the scoring champion, and the finals MVP.
He developed.
That's only been done 7 times in the history of the NBA. Lou Alcindor, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was the first guy. Shaq was the last guy.
Yeah, not bad.
And the guy in between that did it 4 times was Michael Jordan.
Yeah, not bad. Not bad.
Yeah,
not
so
bad
I think he developed, right? Yeah. But I will give the scouting report some credit. They did say he worked hard, and that was one of the things they liked about him in this draft. Jokic, the Joker, Nikola Jokic,
2nd round,
41st pick. It was during a Taco Bell commercial.
That's what the big Quesarito.
Yeah,
that became his.
So you got to take these things with a grain of salt. That's for sure, right? And we talked about Maluach, right? Whether he develops his shot or not. And I talked about how some of these guys that the Suns already have can score. One of them, Jalen Green, instant offense from the Houston Rockets, came over in the KD trade. We talked to our Suns insider Flex from Jersey, and he talked about the value that Jalen brings to the table at just 23 years old. Listen to this.
It's probably the thing that's been frustrating me the most about this deal. Rich, you know how hard we all work in this business to know what we're talking about and look at the tape and dive deep into the film. And I just think people aren't giving Jalen Green a good rap here, man. This is a 23-year-old kid, like you said, 2nd pick in the draft. He's 21, 5-4 for the season. He's a leading scorer on the 2nd best team in the Western Conference. And here's the thing I've been asking everyone to answer. Everyone that is saying Jalen Green is a commodity that's going down, or he's somebody that you don't want to trade for. My question to them is, who's the best offensive player Jalen Green has ever played with in 4 years in Houston? And I'll wait for the pause, Richard. And every time I ask that question, They pause, they don't know what to say, and then they come back with Fred VanVleet. And that's probably the right answer. And so he's never played with a guy that can make him better and that can make things easier for him on offense. So some of the statistics and analytics are going to say Jalen Green isn't the best young basketball player, but I'll push back against that. I'll say I think Jalen Green's best basketball is ahead of him. I think he's going to be a terrific addition with Devin Booker. And I think that kid is ultra talented. I put him on a level with John Morant athletically as the two top most athletic guards in the league. You show him how to work with another guard in the backcourt, and I think the Suns might have hit a home run here.
You tell him, Flex. And I got to give Flex some credit, right? Our Suns insider. He said if Maluach is there at number 10, if the Suns get lucky and he falls, they're going to take him. So this guy's dialed in. And the funny thing about this KD trade, yes, Jalen Green is a guy that struggled in the postseason, but like we just talked about, he's 23 years old. I think he still has plenty of upside. But I'm kind of surprised, Robby, that people aren't as excited as I am about Dillon Brooks, a dog that the Suns have needed for quite some time.
To me, I said it Sunday when we were right here on Fox 10 Talks on Sunday night. I said then Dillon Brooks was my favorite part of the trade. And that's nothing to say about the 10th pick and about Jalen Green.
I'm going to tell Jalen Green you said that. No, I'm kidding. You hear that, Jalen Green?
But because of what Dillon Brooks brings to this team, because how many times last year or the last 2 years, as we could kind of see the wheels falling off this Suns trade, how many times did we look at it and just watch games where we just said, did they even want to be there?
Yes.
Did they like each other? Like it was the term joyless basketball felt like it. Like I've heard it so many times talked about the last 2 years of Suns basketball. It shouldn't be that way. This is a basketball town. The Suns brand of basketball is offense and high flying and fast and in your face. And Dillon Brooks is all of that. Like and it's so interesting. Dillon Brooks is a guy that he's the stereotypical, you hate him when you have to play against him, but when he's on your team, he becomes your favorite player.
Right.
And he's going to be the alpha in that locker room. He's going to be like Chris Paul when he was here, when if things aren't going well in practice, from all we've heard about Derek Brooks, not in like a crazy way, but he'll get up in your face and say, hey, where's this not the way we're doing things here? And that's exactly what the Suns team needed. And just real quick pivoting back to the trade tonight, we got more details about the Mark Williams trade. Visa Micic is going to be going back to Charlotte. Micic didn't really play when he got here, and it's funny because he was part of the Yusuf Nurkic trade.
Right.
Charlotte traded him to the Suns right at the deadline last year, and now the Suns are going to be trading him back to Charlotte as part of this Mark Williams deal. He had a $8.1 million team option that the Suns will exercise and then trade him back. So the Suns will actually save about $2 million in cap space in this trade as well.
So, hey, for $8 million, you can ship me wherever you want to ship me. That's
yeah,
for sure.
I'll take it.
Yeah, it's funny because you were talking about Dillon Brooks and, and the lack of passion that the Suns had. There were some reports, that Kevin Durant said were not true about fights in the locker room, and I was like, well, really? That's great. That means they had some passion. I would have liked to see that fight on the court. How about that? How about you fight on the court and show that you care, And so we talked to the Flex about Dillon Brooks, and this is what he had to say about what he brings to the table in this trade.
Got two dogs in that lineup with Ryan Dunn and Dillon Brooks. Here's the thing. Every coach, every person I talk to around the NBA regarding this trade and regarding Dillon Brooks, they all say the same thing, Richard. If you're not on your team, you hate him. But if he's on your team, you absolutely love him. And he guards multiple positions. If you got to play LeBron, he'll D LeBron. If you got to play, guess what? We will be playing Kevin Durant now. When we play Kevin Durant, that's the guy you're going to put on Kevin Durant, right? All the top guys in the league, he's going to take that battle. He's battle tested, man. This guy goes, and everywhere he goes, he leaves a stamp on that basketball team. We know how he was with Memphis. Memphis was known for being, a very gritty basketball team, and he was a big part of that. Then he goes to Houston, and you see the huge improvement. So, if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, don't call it a dog, Rich. You know what I mean? It's a duck. The guy can play defense, and he reminds me of Jay Crowder in the sense of the impact he may have here.
Yeah, and the old saying says offense wins games, but defense wins championships, and that's what the OKC Thunder had. The good teams, you needed to stop the other team eventually, right? At one point or another, and then you pair up Dillon Brooks with Ryan Dunn, and you got not one but two dogs that you can stick on an opposing team. So I think that's a great 1-2 punch. But we'll have to wait and see, like, again, how this plays out, because I think the Suns have plenty of moves to be made, especially, after the KD trade. And they got some capital. They got some things that they could work with. But it's funny how, I mean, when KD came to the Phoenix Suns, I got to admit, I was like, whoa, this is next level. This is Kevin Durant.
Oh,
And
man.
I never saw it playing out this way, Robbie. What are your thoughts on the KD era with the Valley of the Sun?
It's so hard. Maybe just the immediacy of it ending. We knew it was going to come, but just now that it's over now, it's so hard to kind of evaluate, isn't it? In terms of, obviously on the court, it did not work. I mean, they won one playoff series and went 2 years, not only 2 years without winning a playoff series in his last 2 years, but they didn't even make the playoffs, and they finished 10 games under 500 this last year. So the on-court product obviously did not work. But the amount of Kevin Durant jerseys we saw at the arena every night, or just walking around, and the buzz that even this last year when they weren't good. I mean, I don't know about you, I won't speak for you, but when I was at games, when Kevin Durant was on the floor, I was still just watching Kevin Durant. I didn't.
Yeah.
It got to a certain point where the team was so bad, it was like, I'm still watching KD. It's kind of cool,
Yeah, right, yeah.
And he was great with us. He was generous to the media. I thought, there was different reports about him, different stops and whatever. I thought he was always generous with us. He gave good answers and was thoughtful. And like you said, it's just disappointing how it started during Super Bowl week at like midnight when the trade goes through, and then we're all at the arena, and they invited fans to the press conference. That never happened. I mean, it was insane. It was like a rock star coming to the town, and then it just ended with such a thud. It's a bummer, and I don't think he's going to have his name in the rafters or anything like that here, but it's a shame because the potential was here. I mean, if he would have won a championship here, he would have had a statue outside of PHX Arena.
Yeah, and like you said, the way it ended, it was so odd because not only did the Suns not make the playoffs, they were the only team in the entire NBA that didn't make the playoffs, weren't in the playing game, and didn't have a lottery pick because of Kevin Durant.
And then they got the lottery pick back because of Kevin Durant.
So yeah, it's funny how it's come full circle. And what I kind of was shocked by was when he was talking the day he got traded, which is kind of interesting because he was at an event, and he talked about the fans. They wanted me out of here. Well, not all the fans wanted you out of the Suns fans just want to win. Right, and it all starts with days like today, right? The nights like tonight, the NBA draft. So the Suns have the 10th pick. They get a big guy from Duke. Those guys from Duke, they're usually NBA ready. So it's going to be fun to see what the Suns do in day 2, round 2, and of course in this offseason with plenty of options. And of course, we'll keep you posted on Fox 10 Talk Sports. Keep watching because Robbie and I, we're going to keep talking.